When should children start weightlifting? I posted a clip of Owen messing around with an Olympic barbell just for a bit of fun, but it's actually sparked some great talking points which I wanted to give my thoughts on. Firstly, my views are not based around any scientific evidence. These are just my personal views based on my own experiences of coaching youngsters. I'm going to chat around some of the points that were raised in response to the questions. So to give youngsters just a go at weightlifting as soon as they want to doesn't cut it for me. Yes, teach them the basics when they express an interest, but I would steer clear from formal structured training until the age of about 11, secondary school kind of age. Why? Because of the lack of events specific for this age group. Without something to work towards, children can lose interest really quickly. And in the UK, we have under 11 age group competitions, which in my view are poorly organised. They're supposed to focus on technique, but the scoring is inconsistent. What one referee deems as good technique isn't necessarily reciprocated by the next. And I'd like to see, as there were several years ago when myself, Cyril Martin, Andrew Davis first introduced this kind of competition, for a clear and standardised approach to be in place. As a secondary school PE teacher for 11 years, youngsters often expressed their frustration to me because I was holding them back. They felt capable of lifting more, but my focus was on nurturing fantastic technique and scoring highly in the technical competitions. With good solid technical foundation, the weight should always continue to improve as the lifter matures. Start youngsters much earlier than secondary school age, and they tend to lose interest and drop out before they're even in a position to be pushed. I've seen many talented 7, 8, 9-year-olds quit the sport before they even reach the age of 13 because they've already been training for so long. On the flip side, there are many gyms around the world that do not allow under 16s to train. And if we wait until this age, then many youngsters will miss the opportunity to perform at elite level because training often needs to start in the early years. Restricting youngsters from such an opportunity at such a young age, in my view, is far from intelligent. Everyone lifts, whether that be a school bag, a box, a bench, the list is endless. Should we not have a responsibility to teach youngsters how to lift safely from day zero? Simply bending the knees and maintaining a neutral back are fundamentals that have a positive transfer to everyday life. And when we owned our gym, which was open to the public, we ran youth classes giving youngsters the opportunity to use equipment under supervision in a gym environment. We also provided weightlifting classes. The aim wasn't to lift big weights, but rather develop good lifting technique. If, as a result, we found one or two who wanted to continue training with the aim of competing, then happy days, but that wasn't the focus. I believe sports that are taught in schools are very much focused around teams rather than individuals, yet when youngsters leave education, there's a much greater focus on individuals training in gyms. Should we not therefore provide such opportunities from a younger age to build confidence so people feel comfortable accessing a gym when they leave school? All debatable issues and ones which I fear are given little consideration by gym owners. Now we move on to something that causes a lot of parents concern: maturation and physical development. The question of when should youngsters start to learn lifting technique versus when should we start them with the fundamental movements are very different questions. I would recommend youngsters are exposed to as many different sports and activities as possible from an early age to develop really good physical condition, coordination, timing, balance. In fact, all of the components of fitness required for many different sports. It's perfectly safe to have youngsters playing with a broomstick or a PVC pipe and work through squat positions with the bar overhead with zero loading. The question is, when should we start to increase loading with children? In my view, and remember this is not based on scientific findings, that once a child around the age of 11 has learnt good technique with no weight and they're moving consistently well, demonstrating good timing, balance, coordination without wobbling or falling over, then it's the right time to increase gradually. And by gradually, I mean start them with a technique bar. Even a 7-kilo bar might be too heavy for this age. So finding something appropriate or equivalent to between 2-5 kilos is what I found from experience to be most beneficial. I then have the youngster practice for many weeks, even months, on a technique bar until again, they're moving smoothly, efficiently, dynamically, and with no hesitation or wobbling. Then I would increase a couple more kilos. I believe it's acceptable to increase loading with youngsters in line with not just their technical development, but also their physical maturation. As we know, some children grow, develop and mature quicker than others. Therefore, to put an exact age on this question would be inappropriate. I have experience coaching youngsters from the age of 11, secondary school age, and have had them following a structured training program focusing on conditioning to high volumes, but without significant loading like you would expect with an adult. And research suggests that adults need to be working around 80% of their 1 rep max to see improvements, whereas for children 70% is more appropriate. Rather than pushing a child heavy to establish their 1 rep max, I work on an RPE. I would simply ask youngsters how heavy the lift on a scale of 1 to 10 feels, and in most cases they would answer fairly accurately and in line with how I perceive the lift to look. If they gave me a 5 out of 10, I'd take that as 50%. 7 out of 10 would be 70%. And I would expect youngsters to be able to hit sets of around 5 reps at 70% comfortably, moving really well before I would push them again. Then you have the issue of holding a youngster back all the time. They often want to push and lift a little heavier to see what they can do. And you have to hope that any coach who has experience knows what they're doing in this situation and they decide when is enough. You don't want to do is push to the point where youngsters start missing the lifts. Now let's look at the impact on the joints. If you compare the impact on the body to other sports such as gymnastics and rugby, then weightlifting is far, far less, especially if good movements have been established. Rate of progress will then depend on how quickly they get strong as well as the time that it takes. As we all know, youngsters tend to have a great range of movement. And if this range is not maintained through puberty and adolescence, then range of movement tends to disappear the older we get. Use it or lose it is so true. Have youngsters become comfortable in a squat position with a bar overhead? That's important for maintaining those great ranges of movement. Training for children should be fun. I think we all agree youngsters need to have fun. They're more likely to stick with training. And if training becomes tedious, boring and overwhelming, then youngsters quickly lose interest. As a coach, it's important to recognise this and how far to push a youngster psychologically as well as physically. But at the end of the day, fun needs to be incorporated when planning a session. So these are my views about coaching youngsters. In summary, personally, I would try to wait until the age of approximately 11 years before providing structured Olympic lifting training. Even then, the focus is on moving well rather than lifting heavy. I hope this has given you something to think about and to be mindful of when you are training or coaching youngsters.